Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of Grammar. Today we're going to be talking about how to make a nice, full, complete sentence that not only makes sense, but is very interesting as well. To do this, we're going to look at two parts of a sentence, a main clause and a subordinate clause. Let's find out what each of these words mean. Now, first of all, a main clause is a small sentence that has a main idea and it has a finite verb. It means the verb has a very clear action and you can change it with any grammar, past, future, present. And of course, it makes sense all by itself. So you don't need to add anything else for the sentence to make sense. Let's have a look at some examples. The dog barked. Very clear sentence. You don't need to add any other information. It's very, very clear. It was very cold. Again, that makes sense. So it's a main clause. I will send the email. I need to sleep. All of these sentences are main clauses. Why? Because you don't need to add any extra information. It makes sense all by itself. Now let's have a look at the subordinate clauses and what they mean. Now a subordinate clause is another small sentence, but we have to add it to the main clause so it can make sense. And when I add it to the main clause, the sentence becomes more interesting and more detailed. So it's more complete. But it doesn't make sense by itself. So I can't just write a sentence with a subordinate clause because it makes no sense. That's why I have to add it to the main clause for it to make sense. Let's have a look at what I mean. Now this is an example of a subordinate clause. Because it was scared. Now if I put this sentence by itself, does it make sense in a sentence? No. So I put on my coat. Does that make sense by itself? If I find the address. That doesn't make sense either by itself, does it? When I get home. Again, that doesn't make sense by itself. So these types of sentences, and you'll see they begin with what we call a conjunction, a linking word, and I'll give you some examples in a moment. None of these sentences make sense by themselves because you need to add something before these sentences. That's why they're called subordinate clauses. Let's move on and see how we can combine the two. A conjunction, which is a linking word, is what we add to the subordinate clause so we can attach it, connect it to the main clause. Let's have a look at some conjunctions. Some very popular conjunctions for main and subordinate clauses to be combined are the following words. So pause the video and read the words. These words are very popular conjunctions. So you will be using them when you make a complete sentence. So these are the words that we can add. Of course, there are more, but these are just some of those most popular words. These are the words we will add to the subordinate clause so we can link it to the main clause and make a full sentence. Let's now have a look. So we're going to make a sentence now together with a main clause, a conjunction, and a subordinate clause. Now here you'll see I've taken my main clause, the dog barked, which makes sense by itself. I've added my conjunction because, and there I've added the rest of my subordinate clause. It was scared. So the dog barked because it was scared. Perfect sentence mixing a main clause and a subordinate clause with the conjunction. Let's look at another example. It was very cold. There's my main clause from before, if you remember. So I put on my coat. So you see, if I just said, so I put on my coat, it wouldn't make sense. But because I added it to the main clause, which made sense anyway by itself, they both make perfect sense together. So it was very cold, so I put on my coat. Let's move on. I will send the email. There's my main clause from before. If I find the address. Again, there's a conjunction that links the main clause to the subordinate clause. But the conjunction counts as part of the subordinate clause, so just remember that, okay? And I need to sleep. There's my main clause. When I get home. There's my subordinate clause. And together they make a perfect sentence. Now practice main and subordinate clauses so you can have interesting sentences too. Good luck.